in terms of the public. But this is a significant place. This is when I'm coming across the Tappan Zee. I live in New England, so I drive along the coast. As you know, Route 95 is an old Indian trail. So I drive along that road, knowing full well that my tires are covering over the footprints of many generations of my ancestors. And when I hit the water, when I hit the Hudson and I'm at the Tappan Zee and I look across it, it is such a strong emotional response to just that moment. And I love stopping. I make everybody crazy behind me, but I will stop to look down the Hudson because that is a view that I grew up with and it's one that I cherish. And it's important to me. This is my ancestral land. I mean, I welcome y'all, home to my to my ancestral land. This is a special place. It doesn't feel that way to you, necessarily. But if anybody is here from another country, whether you're first generation or not, or even second generation, the notion of going home, it really means something. I have a Nigerian colleague who I absolutely love, and she likes going home. And when she comes back, she says, "Oh, Maria, I was home." You can tell by the way she says it. There's a real visceral response to being at home, and that's how Ramapough feel. That's how Ramapough. It doesn't matter where we are in New Jersey. Well, every once in a while, yeah, nobody likes Trenton, but we really, we really do. We like being home, and we're not always happy with the way home has turned out, right? We're not always happy with the way it's turned out. So we tend to want to be proactive in preserving our notions of home. So this is a special place.
Very special.
So John's journey. I'm going to turn it over to Eileen and let her lead you on John's journey. And the reason why we chose this piece is because it was written by Naomi Caldwell. Naomi Caldwell is our fourth cousin. She is Ramapough Lenape. She is a professor. Her doctorate is in library science. She has worked at the University of Rhode Island. She has also worked overseas in New Zealand, working with indigenous people there. We all make a commitment to get out there and be involved. And then she came back, and now she is currently working at the University of Alabama. And this piece came to her, quite frankly, and it inspired the authorship of this particular piece. And what it did was it allowed her to sort of capture and document in her own interpretation our six great-grandfathers' experience. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Feel free. Yeah, so. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, well, good luck with that. Eileen, it just went. There you go.
Is it oops?
Yeah. Can you get it?
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, my hand's full, sorry.
All right. Well, everybody's seeing my belly button. I'm just.
It's easy. Y'all are related. All right, let me kind of. There we go.
Okay.
Okay, Professor Elborge is passing out the story. It's a very short story, and we wanted to share it with you. It really encapsulates our ancestors. And through Naomi, we learned that our fourth great-grandfather was actually on the rolls of the Revolutionary War. Not only that, but one of our great-grandfather fought in the Civil War. We have our grandfather fought in the Great War, which was World War I. We've had our ancestors also fight in World War II, the Korean War, which was our father, Vietnam, and in the current war, right now, we have two nephews who are fighting. One was in Afghanistan and was shot 3 times, but he survived and he came home. The other is still there. Just to show you that, like African Americans who fought also in the Revolutionary War and didn't really get much credit for that until very recently. We also had a number of Native Americans who also were very active in the war, in particular the Ramapough Lenape. If you have the story, I just wanted to read part of it along with you, and then we have a question for you. It was a crisp, late autumn morning when John De Freece set out walking down a well-known path. This path was one that his people had walked long before the memory of the oldest elder could recall. And yet, each time John walked, it always seemed to unfold something new before his eyes. This morning was no different. Leaves had just started to release their grip from the branches. Shower after shower of leaves had fallen. Many were lying asleep on the forest path. A gentle breeze swirled around John's deerskin moccasins, lifting the edges of the leaves, causing them to flutter around his ankles. John's footsteps were silent as he began to move more quickly down the path. It was as if the breeze knew when to nudge the edges of the leaves. The breeze lifted the leaf a split second before each footfall. He never bruised or crushed a single wanlikpaku, which is leaf. He simply entered into a silent nishkinu dance with them. John glanced down at his feet and smiled as he noticed the dancing leaves. Anushik, thank you, he whispered. He remembered as a child how his father and uncles had taught him to walk gently among the leaves. He could hear his father's voice echo from the past. His father's voice sounded directly behind him, and magically, John was transported back in time. He was a child again. You must walk quietly if we are going to bring home any ato, dear. Along with the sound of his father's voice, he could feel his small body being lifted off the ground. His father's hands were wrapped firmly around his waist and carried him up over what seemed to be a large dip in the path. The dip was blanketed in dry leaves. Just beyond a slight turn in the path, Nishashish, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but which means 7, Ato were drinking from the edge of a small pond. The eldest heard the slight rustle of leaves as John's small feet were lifted up. The Ato lifted his head and turned his antlers in the direction of John and his father. John's uncle Samuel shot 3 single arrows into the Ato, and the chase was on. Everyone focused on that one Ato. For several miles, they followed the trail of kicked-up leaves, bush, and small drops of blood. They followed until the change was complete. The Ato's life for life of John's small village was complete. Uncle Samuel was the first to slowly bend down at the Ato. John's father followed along with John. He heard them say, Anushi, thank you. Kishilu Mukawinja, he who created us. Anushik Nimata, brother, your life for ours is a precious gift, and we thank you. Uncle Samuel then reached into his pouch and pulled out some leather strips. He prepared the deer to carry it home. The others helped him tie the deer's legs together. Even John was made to feel part of the joy of carrying their gift. He walked with pride, thinking that somehow he was a man like his father and uncles. The deer did not seem so heavy. Little did John realize, but his father and uncles had positioned him between them. They were carrying the weight of the deer. The hunt was complete, and so was John's journey to his memory. Over time, the dip in the path had become filled in leaving only the memory of his father's warm grip and Kakulukusuwiksi. I'm sorry, smile. That's a big word for the word smile, right? Soft feathery coon snow had begun to fall all around John's face. They clung to his eyelashes for a brief moment as he blinked. Instantly, they vanished like the deer running across the path. He was no longer a child of 5. His father's face and voice faded away to the place where memories are kept at home. Suddenly, he found himself walking several yards beyond the dip in the path. He no longer trailed behind his father and uncles. He was a young man walking alone again. A sense of peace, joy, and happiness had entered his spirit. He loved being in the forest, listening to the sounds of animals and the birds. The high-pitched, gentle sounds of the insects brought comfort to his being. He loved the scent of the bushes, mosses, evergreens, and especially the white pines. All of these scents swirled around him as he continued to journey down the path. The air around John was turning colder as more coon were falling. His ears were sensitive and alert to all the sounds in the forest. His father taught him to listen to the trees, listen to the bushes and other living things, because they often told of changes. He could hear each flake as they touched the leaf covered the path. He had arrived at the edge of the forest. Dry leaves had gathered there and were quickly being blanketed by snowflakes. Strangely, he heard the loud sound of Enzukikakskuk, crushing leaves beneath his feet. This crushing noise startled him for a moment. He felt the force of their voices trembling beneath his feet. Wet leaves do not sulalumu cry out loud like this. Something in the air around him had changed. The sound of the crushing leaves sounded like that of a rushing wind through the trees, even though the air was still. Each footfall brought him closer to the camp of the newcomers. His eyes had focused on the tallest one in the group until he was standing toe-to-toe with the group's leader. John remembered hearing his name spoken for the first time by the leader of the Ramapough. The man you need to talk with is called Washington, George Washington. As John stood gazing into the eyes of George Washington, he looked past the man's eyes and remembered life before so many newcomers had come. Before many Indians were forced off their native soil by newcomers. Before many had come to live among the Ramapough. He remembered time spent with his visiting cousins from the Six Nations who had shared news of the changes. He understood that life would never be as it was. The sound of the crying leaves as he approached Washington's camp confirmed what he sensed in his heart. He knew that somehow this meeting with Washington would mark the trail back to him and document a moment in the history of the Ramapough people. And this story came after the author learned that John De Freece was listed on the Revolutionary muster rolls. Shortly thereafter, she dreamed of following the path he walked. The Ramapough Lenape people are known as the keepers of the paths. Thank you. Okay, now what's the question? What was the question?
Yeah.
What was the question?
So one of the questions we have for you has to do with the term decolonization and culturalization and deculturalization. So I'll tell you a little bit about those two words and what they mean to me. I don't always feel compelled to agree with mainstream academia. They don't always agree with me either. So decolonization is a term that actually comes from Joel Spring, who's an Indigenous professor. I'm not sure what Professor Spring is doing right now, but he had written a book, which I use as a text. He was teaching in the SUNY system in state New York, university system. And deculturalization, he documents the deculturalization